Hey everybody, Kevin McElvaney here, Pro Wrestling Illustrated Magazine Editor-in-Chief. Today, I'm excited to present to you a virtual roundtable. Usually these roundtables are PWI staffers. Today, we'll be getting information straight from the wrestlers themselves. From Impact Wrestling, we have Tasha Steelz and Ethan Page, along with Gail Kim, who, of course, is a producer for Impact Wrestling. From the independent scene, we have Heather Monroe, Trish Adora, and Jamie Senegal. A lot of great perspectives and thoughts shared. Enjoy. All right, thanks everybody for doing this. Pretty short notice, and I think this is an important thing to talk about, something that seems to come up a lot, but it's maybe not talked about in the detail that it actually deserves. I think what kind of spurred this on was something that was, Lance Storm had posted a tweet, and we didn't invite him to appear, but he's going to talk about it on his own podcast, and that's fine. But he mentioned that wrestlers had come to him, women wrestlers, specifically saying like they felt pressured to do intergender matches. It was something they didn't necessarily want to do, but they felt like they had to. So anybody on here at any point in your career, have you felt, raise your hand, felt pressured to be in an intergender match that you didn't want to be
in an intergender or just in any match in particular?
I'd say
I guess that's where the gray
Yeah.
area was, because people were talking about people speaking out about being pressured about other stuff as well. So I've been pressured, but not for an intergender.
So do you think that there's a difference here? I mean, not having, I believe what Lance said, but you know, these were, I guess, anonymous people confiding in him, right? But without having anybody's words to go on, and maybe some people have come out and said things since, but would you feel differently, Gail, if it was like, if you were asked, and I know you're not competing right now, but if you were asked to compete in an intergender match, how would you feel about it?
I mean, me personally, I'm okay with it. On the, this is where I kind of wanted everyone else to speak, because I know a lot of people are pro intergender, and I'm not against it. I'm just not for it full time on a regular basis. But going back to Lance's point of view, first off, Lance is one of the biggest supporters of women's wrestling. Truly, I can count top 3 in my 20 years of being in the business. Okay, so people saying that he's not wanting them to succeed or whatever it may be, it's absolutely not true. He's concerned about them, and he's kind of protecting them more than anything. He's talking about also, I saw some people defending the fact that they're like, well, I would say I wouldn't feel comfortable with doing it, and I don't have a problem, I'm putting it on other people. Unfortunately, our business, and maybe it's changed for the better now, but it's not completely changed. Our business still is where we're in positions where you can't say no. I'm sorry, because then the next person will come along and you're worried about losing your spot. And, unfortunately, we're not at a time where women are half the card. They're not. Maybe once in a while you might see it, but that's just not realistic. And people are, like we said, we were talking about age minimums of getting into wrestling. I know when I started at 23 and even making it to WWE at 25, for years I felt pressured, like I could never say no to anything. I mean, I just made the best of the situation when I was so uncomfortable all the time. So I don't think that that's a realistic point of view from these girls saying, I'll just say no, and, that they would speak up. And I just think that that's just not realistic in the majority of situations.
Yeah, I feel like the thing that got a little out of hand was his wording of it was not good, I don't think, because it was stop it all, full stop.
Yeah.
Don't do it at all. And there's so many people that are okay with it. but I do think we need to change the culture of wrestling, which is what we've been talking about with speaking out, to change the culture of wrestling to make it more comfortable for people to say no, or if they're not comfortable saying it themselves, to be like, hey, you can come to me and I'll talk to this person for you. And I think that that's really what we need to change. Or, you know, like using speaking out was also, I think, wrong on his part as part of it, because a lot of speaking out wasn't about that. It was about like sexual abuse, and like it did kind of end up veering towards like training and that kind of stuff, but it was mostly about like people speaking out about their partners that were also wrestlers being like abusing them. And like obviously like there was a huge intergender wrestler that did get put into that, but it wasn't about intergender wrestling.
I think where he was blurring those lines was abuse of power, because it's the same vein in that regard. The abuse of power subject, and I think it kind of crossed over a little bit, but some people were talking specifically about speaking out and some people were talking specifically about intergender wrestling.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think too, like, I don't know if this is like male ignorance, but like I have a daughter, I have a wife. I don't think either of them want to be told what to do. So like, I think just like women in general kind of took it the wrong, like not the wrong way. They took it as a negative, because it was almost like he knew better than them. So it was like, he went out of his way to tell them like, don't worry, it's okay. I'll take care of this. Like, you don't have to worry about it. I got your back. Where it's like, I think we're trying to sway it so that that's not the way it is anymore. We don't need knights in shining armor. Like, I will let Kylie Ray stalling suplex me for 60 seconds because she physically can. So why not show the world, kind of thing. And like, I don't know. That's where like I felt like an urge to respond, because I have a lot of respect for Lance, but I also know the fear in pro wrestling when someone with that kind of weight says something. It's exactly what you're saying. Like, people don't want to say no to opportunity. They also don't want to speak their truth against someone that has power in wrestling or influence in wrestling. So, not to be like the voice of the voices all the time. I know I'm probably annoying on social media, but I just, when I see things like that, I just know there's opportunity to like actually have discussion instead of kind of be like, this is my way. And I know you've been listening to my opinion for many, many years, so you should probably just listen to this. I just feel like this is more of a discussion topic instead of like, let's abolish all intergender wrestling.
But was he saying?
Well, he said every intergender match has to stop.
Yeah.
And to me,
he said has to stop. That's how he said it. Like it was a definite.
Okay, hold on.
What to do.
Okay, I'm not trying to get anyone in trouble, especially myself, because
I know, because I don't remember the tweet that well.
Oh, hold on. Before we ignorantly speak, then can we just have the tweet read?
Yeah, maybe that's a good idea.
Yeah, that's a really good idea.
You got this, PWI?
Are we pulling it up?
Yeah, he's pulling it up.
We got a nod.
Well, in the meantime,
Let's go take
if
this
other people can speak up.
Well, also because that's what I said. I agree with that, because that's what I said to you, Gail, when we had our little like kind of exchange, was that it felt like that thing where they say, well, women need to learn self-defense so they don't get raped. And it's like,
Right.
that's not the actual solution. The solution is teach boys to do better, or like teach people to do better. So that's immediately when I read the tweet, that's what I thought. But then like seeing him explain himself more, I actually understood more what he meant. But the original tweet immediately set me off to be like, what? Like, that's not the solution.
Yeah.
I do have the tweet now. I should have had this up to begin with. So the tweet says, I see some discussion on intergender wrestling matches again. In light of speaking out, I think these matches have to stop. I've heard from so many women who are uncomfortable doing these, but felt obligated to get booked because these matches were accepted norms. And that's
He sounds like he's protecting the girls, you know, the young girls that are coming up through the business more than anything to me. That's the way I interpret it. Like you said, it's just on, I mean, especially right now during COVID, and all eyes are on social media, and we're all, you know, sensitive, or whatever the culture is right now, the cancel culture and all that. It really is on how you read it, because I didn't take it as something offensive at all. I just look at it maybe it's because I know Lance,
Right.
but I took it as him protecting the girls and looking out for their well-being.
You're right. So you've known Lance for a while, and I mean, correct me if I'm. Was he still involved with training the women wrestlers backstage when you were starting WWE, or was that a little before you?
In WWE,
Yeah.
he was active, I believe, and he was always just there to help us.
Right.
Always so supportive. And I know, he has a great success rate coming out of his wrestling school in terms of, and there's so many great female wrestlers that have come out of his school and they all love him. I mean, they all do. Taya, Tennille, Rachel Ellering. I mean, there's a lot of girls that have been trained and they all adore him.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly, I mean, I'm speaking as a journalist here, and a wrestling fan, but not as a wrestler, but I think he was well-intentioned. He was coming from the right place. And I don't know Lance personally, but I've always enjoyed him a lot. I think he at least from his public persona and his tweets and his blogs and going back years, I mean, he seems to be a great guy, and that's all I've ever heard about him. No one dislikes him. And there's a reason for that. And I mean, I wish he'd be here to maybe elaborate a little bit more on what he said, but that's his prerogative. He certainly talked about it a lot on Twitter, and he'll be talking about it on his podcast.
I mean, I want to ask the other people on this call who work the independents. I mean, they didn't really answer when you asked that because we're all there's so many of us. But
Sure.
Do you guys ever feel pressured by anything, whether it's to say yes to any type of match or the intergender wrestling, or what are your thoughts on that? I'd like to hear what's going on currently.
So
go ahead.
No, you can go.
I mean, to be honest, I don't mind intergender wrestling, like what you say, Gail, not all the time, but every little once in a while. I mean, it just feels no different from when you're training in the ring with the boys, when you're like that only girl at training and you're training in the ring with the boys. I feel like, to me, that's intergender wrestling. So just because it's not in front of a crowd or on TV or anything like that, I it still feels the same to me. But I've never felt pressured. Thank God I came up in a training area where I was taught different, and I was taught better of what to say yes to, what to say no to, and I really can't say that I feel for some of the people that have actually had to feel pressure of doing something because they don't want to get heat, and not have and get denied anything, or opportunities would just pass them by and stuff like that. So to me, like I said, I love to prove myself with getting in the ring with the guys, because I feel like us women, we've done a lot, we've proved a lot over the years, and just getting in the ring with the guys just prove 10 times more that we can do what they do, even 10 times better, so that's just my opinion.
I feel like intergender wrestling is like a really big thing for me, because when I was younger, I grew up, I only related with women's wrestling. There's obviously some guys I loved, but like it never clicked with me. It was always women's wrestling. But me being non-binary, I didn't know who I was as a child. I thought I was a boy. So I fought so hard because I wanted to wrestle girls and I wanted to be a women's wrestler. And then when I kind of put intergender wrestling together, when I entered wrestling at 17, I fought so hard to wrestle women, and I was never, ever, ever allowed to. And I wanted to wrestle women so bad. I wanted to be women's champion. I wanted to do this and I wanted to do all that. And it was weird because I didn't know who I was. So in the sense of being non-binary, that thing. So I felt kind of like it was silencing women too, in a way, but also trying to be me. So then with that being understood, I never felt like I was pressured into doing anything that I didn't want to do. And I feel like people kind of walk on eggshells around me anyway, because of how fragile everything is right now, which I never feel like you need to. But on my behalf, like I've read it as it was very protective, but also at the same time, it was such a definite that it kind of had me like, I've been fighting forever to be able to do this because kind of every match I have, whether it's a guy or a girl, is intergender. So it was like, that's
I've
weird.
never thought of it in this situation, to be honest. That's really opened my eyes to another way of thinking, because I am a little bit more old school in the sense of, I think wrestling has changed a lot, obviously, from when I started. So it's gotten a lot more fast paced, it's gotten a lot more athletic. And so I'm all for realism. I was always about wanting, because most people know it's a work. And so I always wanted to.
Wait a minute, what?
Sorry, guys. I always just wanted people to believe, and forget about that part. And it was the biggest compliment when people would be like, "Oh my God, you and Jackie Moore really hate each other." Or me and Awesome Kong, like, people, you guys really hate each other. That's a huge compliment to me, because they get so invested in the storyline and everything. And that's what creates memories to me. I believe I'd rather have, and not to say this generation cannot not have, memorable matches, but the storytelling and all that, that's what I remember from the past. And the ones that, when fans come to me and at signings or whatever it is, they're like, "Oh my God, Awesome Kong, blah, blah, blah," or Taryn, those were all 6-month-long storylines that they got invested into. And the matches were all about storytelling and had, the highlights. But a lot of the matches these days are so fast and, to me, not so realistic. Very athletic, obviously, but and I know you got to move with the times, and I get that part. I would just love it to be a little bit more storytelling and just slowing things down a bit. I know you guys probably hate all that because I know it's just very different.
You feel it's too smooth,
like
you feel like it's too choreographed at times?
Very choreographed, and I truly believe in a lot of the matches where they're so athletic, and I still can say that was an awesome match, but I won't remember it in 5 months, to be honest, or 6 months. I'll be like, I remember it was an awesome match, but I can't really remember exactly what happened. I just remember it was an awesome match,
I feel like we could have a whole table just based on that. But I do want to go to Trish, who was trying to speak a couple times.
So for me, I think that women wrestlers growing up was very empowering to watch. So I grew up with 5 brothers. So I'm the only girl. And I've always been the only girl in most of the rooms I've been in, including in the wrestling world. So I never once felt like there was nothing I couldn't do. I was always right there. It almost felt like just coming up this way, it sort of like makes sense because I joined the Army and things like that. So by the time I turned 25 and was about to start wrestling, at that point, I'd already had my mind made up that this is who I am. I'm a wrestler, and I'm going to, do my art the way I like it. And training at Team 3D and getting introduced to, how it's going to be and learning how to protect yourself. And very early in my career, some of my first matches were with John Cruz and Chuckles the Clown, people that I trained with and trusted. And I never once ever felt like I was out of place, like I didn't belong, like I wasn't supposed to be doing it. Nobody ever said like, you're not good enough. That language never happened to me. I don't even hear that. I blocked that out. So I myself am very empowered myself by intergender wrestling. I always have been.
So, I mean, it's come up a couple of times now. I mean, there is this point that most of the schools in the country there's certainly not a lot of all women's wrestling schools. There's not too many at all. And Nyla Rose actually mentioned this in her recent interview with PWI, cheap plug. But she said that it seems silly to say that intergender wrestling shouldn't be a thing when that's how so many women's wrestlers learn in the first place. Like they came up that way, which that's a whole other discussion, I guess. And then there's the question of lack of opportunities. But actually, I think this probably ties in pretty well, Trish, to the title that you hold, the Pan-African Diaspora Championship, is special because, I mean, there's really no other title like this. And it's not a gender specific title. I mean, like, if you weren't able to compete for that, like if there were just a separate women's title, would this have been as special for you if you won that championship and this was the Pan-African Diaspora Women's Championship? Like, versus you went toe to toe with everybody.
Yes. Honestly, I don't really think of it as in if I wrestle a women wrestler versus when I wrestle a male wrestler. For me, I think of it as, great, now I can wrestle the whole locker room. I'm not just limited to a couple people. I can learn from everybody now. You know, we can all lean in and just kind of do it like that. So I never really felt like I have to act a certain way, you know, either way. And especially, you know, I was the only women wrestler on the card that night as well. So it was just important to kind of lock eyes with those little girls in the crowd, the same way I could lock eyes with Jacqueline when she was wrestling Dean Malenko. And I thought that was so cool. I believed every second of that. I bought right in. I'm pretty sure we all did, you know what I mean? So I don't know, I see it that way. I see it as I'm gonna live by example and do it that way.
So, I mean, it seems like for the most part, the group is like at least supportive of intergender wrestling existing, and then various degrees of enthusiasm around that. Anybody in the group who was a convert at some point, who like thought it was a bad idea or was kind of uneasy about it, either as a fan or as a wrestler when you were starting out, and then came around? Or was everybody just always like, nah?
I mean, my argument will always be I'd rather wrestle someone talented than someone. So like, I really don't care. Like, I would rather wrestle a girl that I know won't hurt me, like will remember the spots, has good timing, good positioning, and she knows I'll be a good base for any of the like riskier stuff that she wants to try. I would rather wrestle a talented female than like a subpar male, just because like that's what people want to see. Like, to me, I like even calling it intergender wrestling, I think is like should be obsolete at this point, where it's just like it's just a match. If Spike Dudley can have a 20-minute match with Bam Bam Bigelow and people in the crowd think it's believable, then I should be able to wrestle a female half my size, as long as we tell the proper story of size difference, strength difference, experience difference, if we're getting that deep into like storytelling and stuff like that. And like I had in Chicago for freelance wrestling a 6-month angle with Kylie Ray. It's a current Impact talent, and we've had 3 singles matches. All 3 of them went over 15 minutes. I don't think anyone in the crowd was like, this is unbelievable. I go out of my way to say no to stuff, like no shooting me off on an Irish whip. I go out of my way to not strike females, because you never know who's in the audience, someone that's had to deal with like a domestic violence issue. So you'll never know, because I'm not
But
not
you're
punching
very
her.
rare, though. But you're very rare.
Okay, but this
A
is
lot
my
of people
thing.
don't do that.
I agree, but this is my thing, is saying it should all be gone is, I think that was the reason that it set everyone off, because there are going to be exceptions. Like, even if to go back in time, China, like, how do you couldn't erase that from history. That is like iconic. She was as jacked as the guys. She looked as clean as the guys. She moved as clean as the guys. So it was like, I think there will always be exceptions to whatever rule anyone ever sets, ever. So I think it's just, we should do everything with respect, whether it's guys versus guys, girls versus girls, guys versus girls, whoever versus whoever. We should all be treated with the same amount of respect and kind of had the same guidelines. But like you were saying before, like the fear-based control in pro wrestling, with like this weird hierarchy of people refusing to allow people to like grow or change or try new things, that has to go. Like, that has to go like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Like we have to be more open to, especially if people are going to do things the right way. I don't know. I could talk about this all day because
Yeah.
I've literally been told no my entire career. I've like what the thing with Lance when he's saying like people are afraid to say no. I have no problem saying no to wrestling guys that I just don't think are good. I feel like girls should be able to say the same thing about doing intergender or even just wrestling a female they don't think is talented as well. It's not rude. We all own our bodies and we all have to keep ourselves safe and professional. So we have to start taking more control over like what we're willing to let ourselves go through in professional wrestling.
So, I mean, I guess the argument there would be like, you're able to say no at this stage of your career.
No, I've said no forever since day one. I
That's
will
great.
say it's for sure taken me way longer to get where I am in my career than everyone else, but I don't live in fear. So like it's a longer road, but if you like take pride in yourself and like your work and just as a human being, at the end of the day, like no one can ever say like you put yourself in a position you didn't want to be in.
So, I mean, but absolutely people should be able to say no to anything that makes them uncomfortable, but anyway in life.
It's never going to happen though. I'm
Why
sorry.
not? Why
Just
not,
not
Gail?
realistic.
Why
Because
not?
I'll tell you right now, I can count 20 or more times that I've done stuff that I didn't want to do, that I felt so uncomfortable with, I've been traumatized with, but I had to because I'd get fired.
I disagree. I think you're one of the best female wrestlers of all time.
Yeah, but I went through a lot of to get stronger, and I was lucky enough to come to TNA and get some opportunities, improve myself, and gain some traction to be able to say no. But think about, like, I started at 23, and I found it so mentally hard for until probably 30, if not more.
Right.
I just can't imagine people who are like, there's a girl who reached out to me recently, an indie girl, who is very young. She started when she was like 14. She's 18 now. And I just can't even imagine. I can't even imagine. Like, I know Alicia Fox and Kelly Kelly started when they were 18 years old and got thrown into WWE. Like, that is heavy. It's a lot, you know, and I think I just know too many personal stories of my friends.
For sure.
Also, as well as myself, that, you know, people don't even know. It's way harder than you think.
No, trust me, I'm not in your position, so I can't even pretend I know. But wouldn't you rather it the other way? Like, would you rather not, like, for people to be able to say no and not, like, have fear of losing their job?
I've wanted that since day one, but it's just not a realistic situation.
It would have to be a full-on culture change. That's what I think you're getting at, Gail. Like, right?
Yeah.
Like, you know that it's not an overnight thing, and it's never going to be an overnight thing. I think the speaking out stuff, people being more comfortable to like talk about those training experiences, or like we starting to empower people to be able to say no. Like, when I first started, I was in a really good school that, like, same with what you were saying, Tasha, is like they really encouraged me to speak my mind and like say no, and I never felt pressured to do things I didn't want to do. There were times when they just wanted to put me against the girls, and I was like, hey, I want to work with the guys, like put me in matches with the guys. And I never felt uncomfortable saying that to any of my trainers. But it has to start there. It has to start with these girls being trained to say, hey, this is what I want, this is what I'm comfortable with, but that's not happening everywhere. It just has to be a full-on culture change. And that just comes from culture in general, outside of wrestling. Women are taught to be polite. We're taught that we can't speak up or we're being rude. Like, that's just how our society's worked for so long that it's going to take a really long time. But seeing how, like, when you came up, Gail, to where we're at now is different, and you acknowledge that. So, like, think about years from now, if we keep at the pace we're going, I do hope that there is like some light at the end of the tunnel for that, like for people to be more comfortable. But also, when you're starting so young, like I was 24 when I started, I already knew who I was a little bit more, and I still struggled with it. But starting so young as a woman, that you're already unsure of yourself. You're already being told by society you can't do certain things, or like you can't be a certain way. And even when you do something they say you should do, then they're like, no, not like that. That's it's the whole culture thing that it's like, that's going to be the hardest thing to change, and it's going to take a really long time, but we need people to support it.
Yeah, and I think also this might be something maybe the girls can identify with. I don't know, maybe everybody, but now like we're seeing a few women in office positions, you know, from AEW, WWE, us, Impact Wrestling. I don't know about ROH, but it might make it easier for females to be able to talk to other females. I don't know. I would hope so. Because I guess because wrestling has always kind of been a boys' club, right? I mean, that's as far as predominantly men, and now just with the women's wrestling expanding and hopefully more people in higher positions, that could possibly help, I would hope.
Good. Yeah, I mean, that's all great points. I kind of want to go back to something that Gail, you'd mentioned earlier and on Twitter, and Tasha mentioned it as well. And Tasha, I'll direct this specifically to you. The idea that intergender matches should not be, but the idea of not doing them all the time. Do you think you prefer to wrestle other women, or does it really not matter to you?
I mean, I'm gonna have to, I know Gail, you said this. I mean, intergender matches are great. Like I love to get in the ring with the guys. Like I've trained with mostly guys. There was one time where it was just me, Deanna Perrazzo, and Karen Q. We would train together, then it mostly was guys. But there's nothing more like when you can create magic with another female. You know, it's just better that way. And just how you said, Gail, like you can have such great rivalries and have a great matches with females, and just come out people talking about how great you were with this certain female. Like with the guys, you know, I love to get in the ring with the guys, but like there's people out there that would judge you and say, oh, he made you look good, and he made you this, and he made you that because he's bigger and all that stuff like that. But you know, to me, I would love to do both, but I also, it just shows more that if you as a female can just uplift another female and help another female out as far as in the ring, because you never know. I mean, you know, another girl can come in and she's green, and if you can make her look like the best thing in the world, that can get you a job for life, you know. So you know, I like intergender. I also like to create a lot of magic with females. I mean, there's very few females I created really great magic with. So, you know, just when I saw like China and Jacqueline and Ivory and Trish and Lita, when they got in the ring and had intergender matches, you know, that made me feel like, you know, hey, if they're doing it, I want to do it. I mean, it's inspirational. But at the same time, it's like, there's nothing more than when you can really do something with another female.
So, yeah, I mean, I think there's this, I don't want to say idea or belief. I mean, I think it's a reality that there's only so many spaces, especially in the independent scene, for, you know, women's divisions and women's matches, unless it's a promotion that specializes in women's wrestling. In a lot of cases, like there's a women's match on the show, right? And then that's it. So intergender matches have also kind of been a way in for wrestlers who maybe they're not as well connected. They're just starting out. Which I guess is where the whole idea of, okay, I feel like I have to do this comes in. But I think a lot of people, at least from my observation, they want to get out there and do this, and they just want to make their way however they can. So.
Can I ask Ethan a question, actually?
Uh-oh.
You're in trouble, Ethan. You're in trouble.
So
Oh,
I know
great.
you're saying psychologically, you know, with psychology, you do it properly, which is amazing because not many people do. Do you find that, say, when you're in the ring with Tessa on a regular basis, that you were more cognizant of the physicality?
Like me towards her? Like,
yeah, like would you
Oh, yeah.
hit her like you would hit the guys?
so I don't hit anyone. I'm not trying to like be like a little mark or nothing, but like
No, okay.
I go out of my way to not hit anybody. So like
Right.
I work all the girls the same as I work the guys. Like I stop my foot at their face, I stop my hand at their face as best as I can. I, having a wife, know not to chop females. So I'm like very conscious of that. And like to me, I know not to do a power bomb and throw a 110-pound person to the mat as hard as I can. But like I said, if it was a male or female, to me, it's like, it's all physics. Like it's just another person.
Okay, well, you're a rarity then,
No,
because
I know I totally know what you're saying, Gail, because there's some guys that I've worked that will treat me the exact same way as I see them treat guys. Yeah. And then there's some that it's like they don't even want to like touch me because they think they're going to hurt me. And so I totally understand what you're saying. Like that's another like thing that I liked about my school. They would like literally get mad at people if they didn't hit me the same way as they would hit the male trainees. I think it's
I only bring that up because one time when I was a manager for America's Most Wanted, I'd always have one spot in the match, and I could do like the high flying stuff and all that stuff. But I remember one time, and I was good friends with Christian and his wife, Christian Cage and his wife, and I jumped off like a hurricane and he power bombed me and like crushed my soul. Okay. And I remember his wife, and I didn't complain about it. It was one spot. And his wife was like, "Oh my God, Jay, Christian, why did you power bomb her so hard?" And like, even with his interactions with Trish in WWF back in the day, he was very aggressive. And he said, well, if the girls want to be in the ring with us, then they got to be able to take it physically. And to be honest, I mean, I'm just thinking now, being out of the business and how my body feels now, I don't think I could take that full time. I mean, if we're all I don't know who's on board of full time, and that's a whole other discussion, but that's where I'm like, is it worth it to do it all the time if they're going to be as aggressive and shorten your career length?
No, I don't agree to having it full time. I'd rather have that one intergender match every once in a while that means something versus of having it all the time. Because at this point, it's like, yeah, how much more are you going to put your body through? Because there are guys out there that will do the same thing and hit you the same way as they do like 200, 300-pound men. And it's just, you know, you're thinking about your career, you're thinking about your bump card, and you're thinking about all that at the same time. So yeah, I wouldn't agree of doing it all the time.
We are kind of looking at this and from a really biological perspective here, which is valid, but it's also true for a much larger wrestler of any gender and a much smaller wrestler of any gender. It doesn't have to be in the context of an intergender match. It could be a very small wrestler against a very large wrestler. But also, I mean, as Jamie mentioned earlier with, you know, non-binary wrestlers, if there's no intergender matches, I mean, like where is the space for non-binary wrestlers? I mean, we're looking at this as like, you know, men should be over here, they're big and strong, they might hurt women by accident, and then women should wrestle other women. And then and not that anybody here is suggesting hard and fast there should be no intergender wrestling, but I mean, Jamie, I think you should specifically address this because I'm rambling about it, but like this affects you personally. So I mean, when you see these arguments, do you is this dehumanizing at all to you? Like, is it not that deep, or is it, I mean, it's got to hurt at some level, right?
So I'm not one of those, there's some people in the community that'll take anything anybody says and be offended outright. You can say like one little thing and people will have like a conniption and blow up and, oh my God. I take it with a grain of salt because at the end of the day, I'm still a wrestler. And if I have to wrestle a man, I'll wrestle a man. If I have to wrestle a woman, I'll wrestle a woman. But I don't want to be held to one specific division because I don't feel like I'm one specific gender. I feel like a cloud of dust with eyes. And I feel like it's like I fought so hard. Like I remember specifically, I was working a lot with Luffy when I was a kid, Lufisto, and she did not want intergender wrestling at Rogue at all. And I fought all the time because I literally, I don't feel like Jamie if I can't wrestle both, because I am both. I don't have a she, I don't have a him, I have a they, because I literally am the best of both combined into one. So like if I wrestle Ethan, I'm her, but if I wrestle Trish, I'm him. And it's a weird thing. And I think when there's a lot of closed-minded people, they're always just going to see it as intergender wrestling. But I think for the bunch of us that are trying to move forward, and when you do properly explain it, people see it for what it is, and they do understand that. Like, I feel like for non-binary people, there is no reason why we shouldn't be able to wrestle the best of the best with both, you know? And I feel like people pigeonhole us at what we are for a gimmick. And I think that's not cool, because, and back to earlier, you had asked if we found any intergender wrestling cringy, and like, I think it was very cringy back in the day. They would bring in girls and have them wrestle men that are like on TV that are like the same size, and the girls would be like shaking in their boots and terrified, and then like take a finish and be out in like 2 minutes. I feel like I'm kind of in that same position right now, where people kind of just don't want to see us. They want to see us be a gimmick, or they want to see us be lesser than. I almost feel like we, the LGBTQ wrestlers, are where women were 10, 15 years ago. And that's a constant battle. And it's really hard, because a lot of people don't see it as progressive as I'd like to think most of us do.
Yeah, I also saw some stuff about, like, you know, when there's trans wrestlers and then people are so hateful, and like someone like Candy, they're calling her a man, and it's like, no, that's not what it is. And
Yeah.
so I saw a lot of that, or like I know she was upset about like people equating the intergender wrestling to like, I have a vagina, I shouldn't have to do this, and it's like, that's not necessarily wasn't part of the conversation either, the biological stuff like we were talking about. But I'm not sure, I don't have enough like knowledge on that, or like obviously experience on that to like speak on it, but I know that that was also a little bit of an issue with it as well.
Yeah.
Can I sorry, Jamie, I didn't mean to
No,
cut
it's
you.
okay. It's okay.
Can I add on yours as like a business side? So like, I run my own wrestling promotion, but I also book an independent in Chicago. So like, I've had to take like the performance side, but also like the creative and the business side. So I like to make money.
Right.
I enjoy making money off of professional wrestling. I have been put in positions where female talent in my promotion is the most over talent, the best talent in the ring as well, and getting the best reactions. So like, if I followed whatever guidelines or rules were laid for me from the generations past, there's no way they would be my main event, and there's no way they would wrestle guys, and there's no way they'd be my champion. But I started my promotion in 2010, and a couple of years in, our main championship is called the Alpha Male title. I just thought it was a cool name. It's not a world title. It doesn't travel. You want to be the alpha male of the jungle, you're the champion. That's the number one thing. I think 2 or 3 females have held that title. To me, it was not about genders. It was just, this is the best talent on my show, and it's making me the most money. So like, I didn't care. Ruby Riott, Heidi Lovelace, was the best wrestler to wrestle for Alpha One Wrestling for whatever year it was, 2017 or whatever. So to me, it was just, it made smart business. And Kylie Rae defending the belt against the top heels, it was not Kylie Rae defending the freelance title against a man. It was Kylie Rae, #1 babyface in Chicago, defending her title against #1 heel in Chicago, whoever it is that month. So like, it makes money. It's the overacts interacting with other overacts to draw. To me, I don't look at it as like, if me and you, like you said earlier, had a match and it was Jamie versus Ethan, that's the billing. It's it's not him versus her. It's all ego eat the page. People know who I am. They see me. They know what they're going to get, versus Jamie. They know what they see. They know what they're going to get. And then those two characters interacting. I think that is professional wrestling, because if this was real, we would all be fighting backstage and actually having real fights.
True.
Winning matches would matter, But that's not it. It's how much TV time do I have? How much promo time do I have? You can't wear red gear. I'm wearing red gear. It's fake. Fake.
Yeah.
Like, no one is actually tough. So any of these guys that are like, I would never wrestle a girl, they could never beat me up. You couldn't beat up the guy you're wrestling the next night either. Or else you would be in UFC. So like, to me, like that all has to go. Or fight me backstage.
Oh, I think you're asking for something.
I do
No.
I've totally opened up my mind though. I do agree with the talent versus talent, what you're saying
Yeah.
in terms of the male and female. But I still am old school as long as they do it psychology with the
Right.
psychology is right.
Yeah, I'm on that side too. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not trying to abolish the things that worked. Like, Ethan Page is not reinventing the wheel. Literally everything I've ever done in professional wrestling has followed the guidelines of someone that has done something successful, and I've just tweaked it just a little bit. So I'm not trying to like tell people we've been doing wrestling wrong. I'm just saying you can't say no to everything. We have to be able to understand that certain people are exceptional talents and should be allowed to do whatever the F they want because they're
But
really good at their jobs.
I bet you, Lance, if it was someone that he knew would be comfortable to say no if they're uncomfortable and the storyline was right, I don't think that he would feel like, no, I think he would change. I think he would be open-minded too.
Yeah, and I don't even think he was saying intergender wrestling is brutal. I was just, he was, like you were saying, it was just the fact that he said it should all be gone. It's almost like a little fast Band-Aid to fix the problem so we can move on to the next thing. But I think the deeper rooted issue is what Heather was saying about the culture having to change. And that is the actual problem, not that females and males are sharing a ring together.
That just reminded me too of, there was a lot of talk of like of men getting a lot of flack for saying no to intergender wrestling because they're not comfortable with it. And that's another thing that I think we should be okay with people saying no to. If they aren't comfortable doing it, as long as they're approaching it like, not in like the way you were saying, Ethan, where it's like, a girl would never beat me up, blah, blah, blah. As long as they're like, hey, I'm just not comfortable doing that. I respect you as a talent, but it's just not something I'm comfortable with. I think we should be okay with dudes saying no to intergender wrestling the same way that women should be able to say no to things.
I mean, I said no to a kiss spot with Dino in Japan during a match called the Gay Wrestling Summit. And I had to explain to them that I'm married and my wife doesn't care that it's a man. So like, I'm trying to get that translated from Japanese to English and back and forth. Yeah, but anyways, that actually was probably the only time in my career I ever felt pressured to do something I didn't want to. And then I was just like, no, I'm going to be slapped for sure when that plane lands when I get home. So.
All right. Well, I want to be mindful of everyone's time here. You know, everyone has things to do. But does anyone have anything to add here, that something that you really wanted to address that we have not gotten to, but you think is important?
Yeah. People shouldn't cancel people for having an opinion. This is not like us hunting Lance Storm.
No,
it's a discussion. I think people should be more open to discussions, especially in a public forum. And saying that is all like straightforward as it is, just putting in your tweet, not trying to start an issue. I would love to talk about it. It's not condescending. It's just you being like, you're opening your social media, your platform. It's just an open forum. I think being more open to actually talking with people is good. And this was, at least for me personally, not an attack on Lance. I just wanted to voice my opinion with other like-minded people.
Sure. Yeah. Trish, you were about to say something?
Yes. Leaning on to what Heather mentioned about having male competitors say, hey, I'm not comfortable. There have been about 2 or 3 times where, where you just kind of have to go, hey, try to feel it out and put them at ease somewhat, maybe a little bit more so than I would have if it was just you and me, Heather, there's just a certain ease. Sometimes you have to put people in as well. So that's something to consider too. If people aren't willing to, now it's like, now it's a give and take now. And that's where psychology comes in. So, I mean, I guess, of course, I'm not going to whip you. You should not be hitting me. Absolutely. I will not be picking you up and slamming you down. You know what I mean? And when it happens, it's supposed to be for that special moment that we worked all the way up to from the minute my music hit, you know? So it's all about considering, obviously, the psychology of it and making sure it makes sense, and also putting, you know, your opponent at ease as well, because,
Yeah, and I think with my experience with intergender wrestling, it's the same as when I wrestle bigger women. Like, it's going to be different depending on the person, how they want to present. If they don't care and they're like fine with me doing whatever, great. If they need that build and the psychology and all that, which I'm same with you, Gail, love storytelling. That's my jam. I think we need a lot more of that in wrestling now. But like, there's some people that care a lot more about it and some people that are fine. And it also depends on the promotion. It's like, there's so many like weird little gray areas that go into it too. But there's some people that don't want me to bump them. And I'm like, okay, like we'll work how we can then. And yeah, I think you're right. It's like, it's about like talking and putting them at ease and like kind of figuring out why they're not comfortable with it and like maybe what we can do to make everybody more comfortable with each other.
Anyone else have anything? Please go ahead.
And if I could bounce right back to you though, one of the conversations that I was having was someone expressing that, hey, my daughter's in the audience. And I go, well, he himself said that she understands what's going on. She's old enough to process that, you know, daddy's acting, so to speak. And when it came time to like actually get involved and like do all the things, you would look in the crowd and she would be excited, even though I would be beating up her dad. Yeah. You know what I mean? That's her dad. She loves him. She's supposed to be mad at me. And, you know, it's just kind of based on the psychology. It's just working together and making sure that it makes sense and make sure you take care of those things where you put them at ease. So now that their whole family is there, and now it's, you know, one of those kinds of things.
Yeah. I've literally been in that situation before, and she bought my shirt afterwards.
Exactly. They love it. They eat it up. It's really about them seeing, you know, themselves in the ring, conquering the bad guy. And we're taking the fact that it's her father out of it. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And being able to hook and suspend people is important.
Very cool. All right. Well, I want to thank you all for coming on here. I mean, we've done these roundtables before with PWI writers. None of us are wrestlers. We don't know what we're talking about when it comes to this particular issue. We could comment on it, but, you know, I really appreciate you all coming on here to share your insight and wisdom with everybody watching. Gail, thanks for basically being the moderator and facilitator of this, because I was failing miserably at it, but you kept things moving along.
I just have too many opinions on everything.
Good, well, you have to come back every time.
And by the way, watch Impact Wrestling Tuesday nights at 8 o'clock p.m.
Yes.
on Twitch and Access TV.
Yeah.
There's three of our talent. Oh, sorry, not three. Well, I'm a former, but three of us here.
Oh, come on. People still pop when you're on the screen.
There's three more here you guys could use.
Yes, I believe.
Gail just accidentally confirmed that she's coming back to the ring. That's okay.
No. Not happening.
Ironically, for an intergender match.
Yeah, right.
What if Lance Storm?
Call it set up for your guys' match.
Yeah.
Yeah.